Welcome back into another live edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff, and today we're just going straight off the cuff because Washington remains at number 5 overall in the college football playoff rankings. And there's a whole lot to say about this, everybody. So all you everydayers out there who are in the comment section, please feel free to drop a comment. I'll try to get to as many as we possibly can here, but right off the cuff, I just don't understand this. Because Washington had another big win over, at the time, they've since dropped out of the college football playoff rankings, number 20 USC. They also have this win over number 6 now in the college football playoff rankings. At the time, number 8 in the AP poll, Oregon. And all anybody can still talk about is Oregon. And I'm not going to run them down as much as, Husky fans might want on the show, because you can say a lot of things about Oregon's schedule, but they're playing really well, right? But the thing that's really frustrating about just seeing the way that the committee, and Greg McElroy did a fantastic job of talking about this on the college football playoff rankings shows. It feels like there was a bit of a double standard where Ohio State had a big, in air quotes, win over Rutgers on the road, and Ohio State remains at 1, Georgia's at 2, Michigan's at 3, and Florida State's at 4. And Washington, who had the biggest win on the weekend, not numbers wise, but the biggest win in terms of who they played, playing USC, had the biggest win of any of these teams. They put up 52 against, an Alex Grinch defense. Yeah, got him fired. Everybody knows, all the everydayers out there knows how much I relish in the fact that Alex Grinch is no longer a member of the USC defensive coaching staff. But I think that one of the things that really is frustrating about this entire scenario, just from a standpoint of why is Washington at 5, is they have the most impressive wins. Ohio State has a couple of them too, right? Ohio State is the number 1 strength of record, as the ESPN stat is, and they deserve that. They deserve to be inside the top 4. I don't know about number 1. You can kind of split hairs. I'm not saying Washington should be number 1 either, but they at least deserve to be inside the top 4 at this point in time, just kind of going forward. They have another big matchup this week against Utah, who's at number 18 in the college football playoff rankings. But I just think that there's a whole lot that needs to be said about just kind of the committee's double standard, as Greg McElroy said, where Ohio State, they had a nice win over Rutgers, and then number 2 and 3 with Georgia, Michigan. It's the eye test. Michigan hasn't played anybody this season, and they have a big test coming up this weekend. They have to play Penn State, and if they win, great. That's a big win. And then Michigan, they'll still have to play against Ohio State before the season's over, and a lot of things will work itself out there. But I'm just really confused with why Washington has to be the team that's left out in all this. And I think the Arizona State game is still weighing pretty heavily on the committee's mind. I'm sure that's a very big factor, but it should almost be balanced out at this point, because not only does Washington have the win over Oregon, and again, the committee can't stop talking about Oregon, and then it's, Washington beat them. I feel like I have a lot of thoughts here, but I feel like those should almost be reversed. And Washington hasn't, they didn't play their best football for 2 weeks, but it almost feels like there are excuses that are being made for Oregon losing to Washington, but there isn't that same energy of, Michael Penix wasn't feeling very well. Washington has missed a lot of guys due to injuries for decent portions of the season, including Jalen McMillan, Julius Buelow, who we've seen come back. And then, that's without getting into some of the guys that are out for the season, whether it be Mateo Mele, Gard Memolar, who's supposed to be a big part of this offensive line unit, starting running back Cameron Davis. But I just feel like there's a whole lot of double standards that are going on, where Washington isn't necessarily getting some of the love that it deserves for being a 9-0 team, because something that Kalen DeBoer talks about all the time is that good teams find a way to win these games. And that's exactly what Washington has done to this point in the season. They have found a way to win every single game. You guys are going to enjoy our Wednesday show as play-by-play broadcaster Tony Castricone joined us. So be sure you stay tuned for the Wednesday show. And that's one of the things that he and I talked about in our first segment, is that we talked about Washington has found a way to win all these games. And that's been one of the most impressive things this season, is no matter what has stood in their way, they have continued to find a way to win. And this is all somewhat hearsay because if Washington continues to win out, they will find a way inside the top 4. There is no way that if Washington makes it to the Pac-12 championship, and if they're able to do that, because they'll have to play Utah, who is ranked this week, Oregon State, who is currently number 12 next week, and then Washington State after that, if they're able to win out, they will find a way inside the top 4. And if they're able to win in the college football, in the Pac-12 championship, they will find a way inside the top 4. So this is all somewhat hearsay, and it's just a bit of an instant reaction. But this we have to talk about this. This is still something that needs to be talked about, and we will continue to talk about it. But first, there are only 2 games left this season, Husky fans at home. That first one being this Saturday against Utah, and you shouldn't be stressed when you're buying tickets to those events. So that's why you need to download the Game Time app, because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Some of the great things about Game Time is how easy it is to find and buy tickets for every single kind of event in your area. Like I said, and views from every single seat in the venue, so you know exactly what the view will look like from your seat before you buy. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Like I said, see the view from your seat before you buy, all in prices that show your total upfront, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, continuing on here with my rant. I appreciate everybody down in the comments here. Vici here says, should Washington win both win the next couple of games, there's no way Florida State can remain ahead of Washington. That's true. I do agree with that statement. But and the tough thing is, there's an argument to be made that Florida State shouldn't be ahead of Washington right now either. Is the tough thing, because Washington has a stronger strength of schedule of competition that it's played. I talked about I talked about Oregon. I talked about USC. The Arizona win, which Lars and I have discussed on the shows earlier this week, looks better and better every single week, as Arizona is now ranked at number 23. And they could have been ranked earlier on in the year, as I know that's something that we've also talked about on the show, which that is somewhat frustrating, just to kind of, again, see this double standard where the committee is just saying, yeah, that works for these teams. And I want to believe that some of this is building towards a Michigan-Ohio State showdown where it's a win and in kind of thing. And that's cool. As a fan of college football, I like that. I think that's fun. I think that's cool. But the fact that Washington is the one who's receiving the short end of the stick here, and the one who is just has to remain on the outside looking in until that happens, is weird. And it's frustrating from the standpoint of somebody who covers this team, because they had their missteps, and are they perfect? Absolutely. They're absolutely not perfect. They have had their missteps. Look at the Arizona State game. You can say half the team was riddled with the flu, but it was still a misstep. And at the same time, you can just say, well, on the other end of that, they beat Oregon. And Oregon fans will say whatever they will about that contest. Oh, they'd be favored on a neutral field. Who cares? It doesn't matter at this point in time, because Washington won the game. And until they play again, Washington won that game and will always have that over Oregon. That's just the fact of the matter. And so the fact that Oregon has a higher percentage chance to reach the college football playoff, or whatever these ESPN advanced metrics are, that are really just all just prediction, it shouldn't matter. And Washington, yeah, there are 5 undefeated teams. 2 of them are in the same conference, like I said. But until that happens, it shouldn't matter. And Washington deserves to be in the top 4. And Krakenhawk has a great comment here. Can someone please explain to me, like I'm in 3rd grade, shout out to Michael Scott, why Michigan, who's played no one, and Florida State, whose signature win is a 3-loss LSU team, are ranked higher than Washington? I understand Ohio State and Georgia, which, yeah, absolutely. Both of those ones make a whole lot of sense. And Krakenhawk, again, here in the comments, Ohio State's signature win or Notre Dame was 3 losses in a Penn State team who has no offense. Yeah, Penn State is still a really good team, though. I have a lot of respect for what they're doing over there. They have a lot of talent on that team, and they were ranked inside the top 10 at the time. The Notre Dame win doesn't look as good as the weeks kind of go on here, but the Penn State win does count for a lot. I will give them a lot of props for that. And even at the time, like the Notre Dame win did look really good. So I get that. Like it's you can make the same argument for Washington, right? Let's say Oregon does beat USC this weekend. The USC win doesn't look as good. So the argument can be made on both sides of the coin there, but I think that with Michigan, yeah, it's really confusing. I was just talking to a friend of mine before we jumped on here who was saying, yeah, Michigan hasn't really played anybody, and that's really confusing. And I don't understand. Like Florida State again has had some okay wins, but some of their wins have been in the same vein as Washington. We're like on the road at Clemson. That Clemson team isn't very good. We saw what they did in Notre Dame this weekend, but up until that point, they haven't been great this year. And I think that that's something that should also be taken into account, just kind of as we look through the rest of the season here and everything else that goes on. But I want to get into more of just why I think that Washington fans, well, it's frustrating, and Washington fans have a right to be frustrated with everything that goes on. But I think that if they're able to just keep winning, like we've seen up to this point this year, that there really isn't that much of a cause for concern. And I feel like we won't get into, as Jeff Washburn says, the Oregon fan hypothetical situation, which don't matter at the moment. We'll get into one or two of those because they did a good job of that on the College Football Playoff show. But first, we're going to take a second here and shout out our good friends over at FanDuel, because you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. And I want to just kind of get back to Washington here, because I can spend all day talking about, Washington against Ohio State, Washington against Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and all the other teams that are above them. But let's just take a step back and let's look at Washington going forward, because it looks like there's this collision course that Washington and Oregon are going to meet again in the Pac-12 championship game. And if that happens, Twitter might just actually explode if that happens. And I'm personally really looking forward to that scenario. But let's look at the road that Washington has to take to get there, because this is Locked On Huskies, not Locked On Ducks. Shout out to our buddy Spencer McLaughlin. But I think that the main thing that needs to be noted, as I talked about, Utah is still ranked at number 18. So that, and you say what you will about Utah, who got waxed by Oregon a couple of weeks ago. They're still a good team. They're still ranked, so they deserve their respect. Kyle Whittingham is a fantastic coach. He does a lot of really good things over there. And then after that, it's Oregon State, who right now is number 12. And, some things go one way or another this weekend. That could end up being another top 10 matchup for the Huskies. That's not going to be an easy game in Corvallis. It's not. I'm telling you that right now. In our preseason predictions, that was the one loss that I had on this Husky schedule going into the regular season. So we'll see what happens with that over the next couple of weeks. But I think that if the Huskies can find a way to win both of those games, and you can get to the Apple Cup after that, no disrespect to the Coug, but this is the season will almost be defined within the next couple of weeks, which is what we've talked about all year on this show, where November, if you can get to November and still be in a position to make the playoff, then you just have to take it 1 week at a time. And the Huskies have done a good job of that so far. They pulled off a good win against USC down at the Coliseum. And now it's all right. Now all the focus turns to Utah, and it's just keep winning. That's all you have to do to find your way into the college football playoff. Because if and this is the last year of the Pac-12, so you can talk about some of this Pac-12 bias stuff all you want, which is frustrating, and it is what it is because we've heard enough of it over the years, especially during the time of the college football playoff. But let's say Washington is able to get through the regular season at 12-0. There is no chance that they are left out of the top 4. There's just simply no chance of that. Is that possible? Yeah, we'll see if it happens again, because anything can happen in the world of college football. But I think that it really does need to be noted that the bias is still somewhat there. I really don't want to get into some of the nuances of, oh, well, there's this versus that, because I talked about that a little bit earlier on when it comes to the double standard of even Ohio State versus Georgia and how those two teams seem to be ranked by the College Football Playoff Committee. But I think that everything is going to be okay for Washington as long as they're able to just keep winning for the rest of the regular season. And honestly, that's all that matters, because the original point I was trying to make before I go off on a tangent like I often do, is there is no way with wins over 4 ranked teams at the time, if they can pull off these 2 wins over Utah and Oregon State, and you can even throw in the Arizona win if you want to, if they can continue to win and find a way to stay ranked over these next couple of weeks, that's awesome. And that continues to just make the Huskies look better. And you can almost call that a ranked win if you want to, because they're a really impressive team. What Jedd Fisch is doing down there is truly impressive. So if you want to call that another ranked win, great. Washington's resume at that point is arguably the best in the country if they get through that measure unscathed. It's a big if, but if that happens, there is a legitimate argument to be made that Washington just should even be a top 2, top 3 team. Again, big if, but it's very, very possible. So number 5, that's okay for right now, because there's a whole lot that can happen in front of you over these next couple of weeks. But it's still frustrating. It really is, because Washington deserves to be recognized as a top 4 team at this point. And as long as they continue to win, I think they absolutely will be. Thank you so much for tuning into this live broadcast. This has been really great. Solo shows are always tough for me, but I really appreciate all the everydayers in the comments, leaving everything. I really appreciate all of that. And if this is your first time here, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We are there. We are everywhere. Leave a like on this video. Leave us a 5-star review if you're audio only. Drop a comment down in the comment section. We'll try to get back to you as many of you as we possibly can. And we'll talk to you next time, whenever that might be. Again, tune into our Wednesday show as we are joined by Washington's play-by-play broadcaster, Mr. Tony Castricone. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you then.